Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon, the podcast, where we dive deep into all things health and wellness to help you find health and healing inside and out for now and forever.
Hello, and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon. I am Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice Trifecta Collective, and this is my co-host and head practitioner, Shannon Callery. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how's it going?
It's good. So if you are watching this, I'm in a new location. If you are listening, FYI, I'm in a new location, and I will share in probably a couple episodes from now, all about the transition and a whole bunch of stuff that's going on right now. But I am in a new location, and this will be a very familiar location from here on out for the foreseeable future. So I'm super excited, and I'm super excited to dive into today's topic of weight loss. And we're gonna. We are going to approach this from many different angles, I think, today. I think we'll personally, talk about our personal experiences with weight loss and we've already shared quite a few things about body image issues and things about that. And, certainly coming from me personally, coming from, having hypothyroid issues and then, being diagnosed with Hashimoto's and the weight gain that comes along with that. And, certainly we work mostly with women who are hopefully, in their eyes, trying to lose weight or at least feel more comfortable in their bodies and feel back into their bodies. And then so we'll approach it from, personal experiences, some of the holistic health kind of experiences. And then I also have an additional about 5.5 years in the personal training world. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. What that looks like. I'm still pretty actively involved in a lot of communities that talk about this, and I have, the macros and the programming, and I actually don't. I was thinking about this morning. I actually don't think I've ever shared my experience in the bodybuilding community. So I can certainly chat a little bit more about that and how I destroyed my body, trying to get into that world. And so many, and I see this go wrong with so many people who are trying to be competitors or look like a bodybuilding style competitor. We'll dive into all of that today.
Yeah, there's so many different directions in things to touch on when it comes to weight loss. I feel like a good starting point would be maybe covering some of like the most basic things that we see that we've, I'll say this is like a blanket statement. For most people, the number one thing that I see is that, we're not eating enough food. And this kind of ties into the fasting thing, which I'm sure, you can touch on, especially being in like, the exercise bodybuilding community and all that stuff. But I will largely say that, when it comes to weight loss, when people come in to work with us, of course, like if you have let me back up a little bit. When people come in and they're working with us, weight loss is a big thing. It's a very big societal thing. Everyone wants to lose weight. It's not so much about how you feel in your body, which we're getting to that. I think the push is going in that direction. But a lot of it is still about like, how do I look on the outside? What does my appearance look like? So when people coming in, they're wanting to lose weight. But obviously, if you have these big health issues going on underneath that, like any of these larger toxin issues like mold, parasites, heavy metals, any like big hormone imbalances, certainly, autoimmune disorders, things and whatnot. If you have any of that stuff going on, it's nearly impossible to lose weight. And then when we pile things on top of it, like fasting, I know is super controversial, but we just, from our experience, personal experience, and what we've seen with clients, like fasting does the opposite. It only harms your body more. It's going to make your body hold on to weight. We just haven't seen anything good from it. not eating enough food, not eating enough protein, all of these things are ultimately just putting more and more stress on your body, which is going to make it hold on to weight. And then we get into that extreme exercise. And I think something that's important to include here is even certain types of yoga, because there's tons of yoga communities out there that are like very intense, fast paced, all of that stuff. When you have any of those issues going on, all that's doing is going to be putting more and more stress on your body. So I feel like that's kind of like a pretty like basic starting point to touch on.
Yeah, for sure. And, even like, let's back up even a little bit more from there. So if we look at basic weight loss, calories in versus calories out, we are not denying that by any stretch of the imagination. It is science, and there is a lot more that goes into weight loss. And if you've ever started to cut calories, especially if you've counted calories, you're going to get to a point where you literally cannot drop your calories anymore. And if you do, you notice the opposite reaction starts to happen. You start getting, 1,400, 1,300, 1,200, maybe even a little bit less. And your body just stops losing weight. Even if it has been consistently losing weight, you're going to hit a point. So I will touch on that, maybe only get into more of like the exercise piece, because I have a lot about that piece. But looking into, what Sheena was talking about, one of the biggest things that we really talk about, that we really value within our practice, is reducing stress inside and outside of the body and helping the body feel safe. And for me, when it comes to weight loss, this is a non-negotiable. When we think about long-term weight loss, your body has to feel safe. And if it does not feel safe, whether, from any of these things that, Shannon listed, it's going to be very challenging, if not impossible, to lose weight. The other piece I just want to touch on a little bit deeper is the thyroid piece. So the thyroid, if you go back and listen to our thyroid episode, highly encourage it, because we dive so deep into all the technical side of things when it comes to the thyroid. But the thyroid plays a really big role in our metabolism. And women are more prone to thyroid dysfunction in either direction, hyper, and anything else that kind of comes along with that. Those are kind of the two major ones. But, we can obviously have many other issues going along with the thyroid too. But if your thyroid is struggling, which once again, women are very prone to thyroid dysfunction. The thyroid is very sensitive. It's a tiny, tiny little thing that does so much for our bodies. And when we are stressed, when our body isn't safe, when our thyroid is impacted for whatever reason, it's very, very, very challenging to lose weight. And we see a lot of hypothyroid type patterns. Now, there's obviously a lot of layers that can come underneath that. But if you have thyroid issues, this is a major player in the game. And finding the root cause of those thyroid dysfunctions, I also think it goes with hormones, sex hormone imbalances. You get a lot of sex hormone imbalances, very, very challenging to lose weight. And here's the thing, once again, your body's not feeling safe. When our bodies feel safe, things should be in balance. Our thyroid should be balanced. Our sex hormones should be in balance. We should be sleeping, all of these things. And it's when we get to a place where that's not the case, our body and our weight really is one of the big signs that our body will literally physically show in that. And it's if you're not super connected with your body, it can be hard to tell sometimes some of these other things. And I'll speak for myself, and Shannon probably falls into this category too, because I know we've had some conversations about this. But as practitioners, we've gotten so in tune with our bodies that sometimes we can go the opposite way, where, one little thing kind of starts to go wrong. We're like, oh, something is not right. Something's off. And then we go down some holes, and we got to bring ourselves back here.
Yep.
So, yeah, and that's, but the weight is something that's pretty obvious. We'll start to notice pretty easily. Our clothes don't start to fit as well. We're showing physical signs, whether that's our face, belly, wherever we carry our weight, all of these signs. So just wanted to touch on that too.
Yeah, and it's not only the physical part of the body that can be out of balance. So this can also have to do with the emotional body as well. So because we hold emotions in all different areas of our body, one of those spots can actually be like, maybe you're feeling something like tight throat, like a ball is in your throat, like scratchy, and you're having all these other issues that are going on with it. Sometimes, yes, you could have some hormone stuff going on. Maybe something's out of balance with your thyroid, but it could be because of the emotional aspect, and some sort of emotion needs to be released from your body. So we have these multiple things that can affect, the thyroid, let alone everything else in your body. And it's really tough because I feel like that's not something that's very widely talked about. But yeah, emotions also play a huge role there. And that also kind of falls in line with the nervous system portion. Like we see and spend time, and I'm talking like months, like, 6 to 12 months with people on whatever topics it may be or issues. Certainly mold is one of those ones that takes a longer time. And if we're also working with someone who's not only trying to heal mold, but also wants to lose weight, sometimes we get to this point where, we've rebalanced the physical body, we've gotten all the toxins out, and we're feeding ourselves good food, but we have this nervous system or emotional piece that maybe some unresolved trauma that we just haven't been able to address. Sometimes we will not see the weight loss we want to see until we are able to get to the root of those trauma issues, the nervous system regulation issues. And that can be really tough because sometimes we might be in like a physical location that we're not able to get ourselves out of, and that's affecting our stress. When it comes down to things like that, that's where it gets more difficult. And sometimes adding in extra things like EMDR therapy, there's tons of Reiki, energy healing. We need this extra stuff to kind of help give our body that push and get our nervous system in balance. And then we're able to see some of the weight loss after that.
Thank you for bringing this up, because I will say I've never, and I'm throwing myself in here as well, I've never met anyone with a thyroid issue that doesn't have throat chakra issues.
Yeah.
People pleasing being the vast majority of people with thyroid issues. I've never met anyone with hormone imbalances that didn't have some sort of sacral chakra imbalance blockages, whether that's from sexual trauma, whether that's from, unhealed feminine and or masculine wounds. I've never worked with a client in the last however many years without these issues. I'm also really sorry if you can hear anything in the background right now. It sounds like there's a fighter jet flying over me. So
it's very low, very low.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Yeah. Well, I'm very sorry. But so this part plays such a big role. And, I'll also say the more, after I've done all of my big work, the more I heal my nervous system, the more almost the weight doesn't matter. From like one, it just like doesn't matter to me. Like what my physical body looks like, as long as it's healthy and I'm, nourishing it and moving my body, which are just very regular parts of my life. But my body understands. And I will also say, especially this year, I've noticed without making any active changes, and I think I've shared this before on, I forget what episode, but, my physical body has changed, specifically this year, and has become, I would say, more feminine, softer, and just, even just like weight distribution has shifted and changed in a way that looks more feminine. as I've done a lot of work this year on embracing more of my feminine energy, tapping into that, healing the sexual trauma piece. And so this is such a huge piece. And once again, we're not denying the physical aspect of this. Yes, there are like literal physical things you can do, and all of these bigger mold, heavy metals, parasites, gut overgrowth issues, like, yes, that all plays a role too. And this is a really big one that is sneaky sometimes where, it's, I think about constipation. If we think about constipation is a holding in. And once again, I don't really know many people who, especially when they had constipation issues starting young, did also have some sort of trauma response as part of that too, where they were holding emotions in, shoving things down, protecting themselves, holding on to things. It's very similar with the weight where, if our body's protecting itself, there's a reason why. And once again, there might be a physical reason why. And there also is oftentimes energetic and or emotional reasons as well. And when we start to dive deeper into those, uncover those, heal those, acknowledge those, allow those emotions to be fully felt, to be fully released, there are massive, massive shifts.
Mm-hmm. And, excuse me. And this is part of, I don't want to say the problem, but maybe one of the tougher things is for people to accept that it's going to take time. It's just not, if you want, there's, and certainly this because yes, you can get to a point where you balance out the physical body and maybe you jump right into the gym and you start doing like slow strength training, which is really, really great for your body. And you'll probably see some shifts and adjustments there. But there's such a big difference between when you get to this point where you're healing all this trauma, and it's almost like unexplainable. I don't know how to put it to words. It's kind of like your body just like melts into place. I feel like is the best way to describe it. And it without even doing like any of these intense exercises, it's just like it's being very, very gentle with yourself and getting to this emotional piece. But it's hard because it takes time. And I know it's frustrating. I mean, we spend, like I said, 6 to 12 months working with people. And I get it. After a year of doing all of this work, you're like, oh my God, maybe you're not 100% where you want to be with the weight loss. But this emotional trauma piece, like you cannot heal that quickly. It's very, very difficult to do that. And it's going to take time. And then we have all these other options out there, like certain medications that are supposed to be like a quick fix to our body. And guess what? We have people who are on the highest dose of those and they're not seeing any changes. And it's because they're not willing to like crack open that emotional shell yet and get to the inside of that. And as soon as they do, then we start to see some changes. But it's tough because it's just not a quick fix and it's something that's going to take time. And we're not used to that as a society. We want things like as fast as possible to happen. And this is not one of those things. True weight loss isn't.
Exactly. And once again, we're talking about long-term sustained weight loss versus like,
Yes.
how do we lose 10 pounds for an event next month kind of thing.
Yes.
The other thing that really came up for me as you were speaking is, and I see this having worked with dozens of clients at this point, whether that's just personal training and or in the work that we're doing now, who have decided to do surgery. One of the weight loss surgeries, and there's a couple ones out there, whether that's the sleeve, that's probably the most common one. And one of the biggest setbacks or hurdles that I see in long-term success, even after these surgeries. And by the way, I've only had one client I've ever worked with who lost the weight, and she lost, hundreds of pounds, and kept it off. Like she lost like 180 pounds. And at the time that I was seeing her, it had been 2 or 3 years and it was still off. And one of the biggest things that she did, and this is where I see the mistake happen, is also changing your own relationship to food, to exercise or movement in general, and also to your own body. And I know there is required counseling to qualify for these surgeries. And I also know, once again, from having worked with dozens of people who have gone through this process, it's by and large garbage. They're not digging deep, and this one person that I, had success and kept it off did trauma therapy on her own before and then after the surgery to work on her own relationship with food, with movement, with her body. And once again, I'll say, like, as someone with eating disordered eating, binging and restricting and punishing, the more gentle I am with my body, and just like I do focus on protein. I'm a very protein focused nutrition. I can't see the last time I tracked my protein or just nutrition in general, but it's very protein focused, and I can tell my body wants more vegetables or needs some starchier carbs, and as I'm giving it notices and it feels better. And even my workouts, I'm working out right as of this moment, once or twice a week from a strength training perspective. It's about all that I can get into a gym wherever I am. And even my workouts have really shifted. I'm doing much lower weight, and it's really just for maintenance. How do I just protect the muscle that I have? How do I keep my body moving, ranges of motion really good? And once again, I've seen massive shifts in my body. And, I'm not saying I have a six pack, nor do I want to, by the way. That is never my goal. Once again, I've been there. I know what it takes to get there. And no, thank you. I have way too many other things. I'd like to live my life and not live and die by the gym and counting calories and all that kind of stuff. That's just no longer of interest to me. But the more I healed my body and just focus on what does my body need? How can I help my body? What is it feeling? Do I need an extra long walk? That I've been doing more hikes and just like being outside, no phone, no signal where I am, being up in the mountains and just putting that time away. And yes, sometimes they're hard, sometimes they're not, but that is so nourishing to my body. It's so grounding. I always feel so good physically and also mentally and emotionally, doing the things that I'm doing. My weight has not changed much at all since making these shifts.
Yeah, it's really crazy to again, I feel like it's almost one of those things you have to see it to believe it, but because a lot of times when it comes to like when we are onboarding someone, if they're doing like crazy intense workouts, we normally just say like, hey, I know it's tough, but let's take a pause and like, let's get in like some nature walks if you can, or maybe some really gentle, like some stretching or yoga, whatever it is. But it's all about that slowing down factor. And it feels really weird at first because our bodies aren't used to that. Like you said, like pushing like hard in the gym, trying to get that six pack, because I feel like that's what everyone or most people desire. But yeah, just the whole like slowing down aspect is going to help you get more in tune with your body. And then in the end, that's going to help you be able to figure out what you need to take care of yourself. Like, I just went on a trip this past weekend and I was having a great time. I certainly wasn't like watching what I was eating or anything like that. But when I got home, I realized that, I was very, very tired and my body was like craving sleep, craving more water. I probably didn't get enough water in while I was there. I definitely didn't get my normal protein intake in while I was there. And it's like, you can just tell, like, but that's the whole point though, is part of the slowing down process is getting to know your body and what it needs and becoming intuitive, because the intuitiveness guides you and it'll let you know what you need to keep going. And I think that's a really, really important piece.
Exactly. And, the other side of this too is, and this is something, and I want to talk about just like a few different like verbs that are often used, like words that are often used around this space. And I want to clarify some of this, especially when it comes to more of the fitness space. So, there's a difference too between fat loss, general weight loss, which also typically includes muscle loss. And I want to come back to that one because that's a really big one. When you hear us talk about protein intake all the time, and there's a resurgence of, and I think we talked about it on one of the last couple episodes of this, the study from early 2000s of protein intake. And so I'm going to come back to that. And then body recomposition. And, when we think about body recomposition, that's where definitely some people want to lose weight, but a lot of people want body recomposition. And what I mean by that is the word that's commonly used that I'll say, like, anyone in the fitness space, we all hate this word, even if we use it in our marketing, is tone.
I knew you were going to say that. I was waiting for it.
Look, yeah. And look, there is no such thing as quote unquote toned. What toned is a drop in body fat enough so you see musculature. And that often requires, especially women over the age of 30 or 40, and definitely way more as we get older, you've got to put on some muscle here to get this toned look. And when we just restrict calories, you are likely going to lose a lot of muscle mass and the fat. And we've seen this. I mean, if you talk to anyone who in the fitness space who has ever tracked body fat percentages, whether that's with an in-body scale, one of the handheld ones with calipers, most of us are trained. Calipers are generally going to be the most accurate, unless you have access to like a water tank, and I can't remember what that's called, but that's just not accessible for most people. So it's really the recomposition that most people want, and often that because it's reshaping the body and the body looks different and your clothes are going to fit differently. And I can tell you my weight, and I haven't weighed myself since I left Virginia, but I can be my typical weight and look drastically different depending on what body fat looks like, on what muscle mass looks like. I mean, I can be, at my leanest, which was right before my accident, I was about 155, and I looked, and you could see abs, I looked quite lean going into that. But, I used to play this fun game of, hey, guess how much I weigh? And the most common answers I get would be like 130, 135. And I'd be like, I am 155 and I look like this. And that was because of the amount of muscle mass I had. And so I think that's a really important distinction too when we talk about weight loss. Why is it a number on the scale? If it is, if it's not, can we refocus that on how do you want to feel in your body? How do you want to feel it in your clothes? Because that for me, and I really do think, having worked in this space for almost a decade at this point, that's really where people want to land. They want to feel good in their clothes. They want to feel good in their body. They want to feel comfortable. And if there is that connection to the scale, often that is a trauma response where they were often told growing up, hey, no one's going to love you if you're over whatever number this is, or you felt your best at this number. Let's say it was like 150. I felt my best, and that's when I was loved, and in this, particular relationship. And that's the number that gets stuck in your brain because you're like, that's when I felt loved. That's when I felt good. And it honestly has nothing to do with that if you're in a very healthy place personally and also in your relationship.
Yeah, and this is one of the, I really, really resonate with this. So for reference, I don't even own a scale. I have no desire to weigh myself because I now know that number means nothing to me, except for, like when I go to the doctors or something and they force you to take your weight, that's the only time that I ever see my weight. But yeah, just the difference between the number in what you're feeling. So it really, I want to say that this is something that frustrates me, and it's just because it makes me sad that we don't understand this. But again, we're working there in that direction, and that's certainly why we're having these conversations and sharing this. But the number, it doesn't matter. What people are going for is they want to feel, like you were saying, on the inside. They want to feel better. They want to feel like they can function better. They want to feel confident in their skin, in their clothes, and all these things. I mean, at one point, I think I got down to like 115 pounds, that 110, 115. That was probably like the lowest I had ever been. In looking back, I was getting outside praise from everyone for being so small. So in my head, I was like, oh, this is great. I felt completely awful. I couldn't keep my eyes open. Like my whole body, like my digestion was not working at all. Everything was a mess. I was taking massive amounts of sleeping medication because, my cortisol levels were all over the place. Everything about how I felt was not good. There was nothing good about it, but my brain was telling me, oh, this is good because people are telling you that you look good. And that's the part where like I feel like we still get stuck on what, even when we say in general, like, oh, I want to get healthy. And then people continue to talk and say, yeah, I want to get down to this weight. I know that's a healthy weight. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. These two things don't have anything to do with each other. Like I said, I was 115 pounds and people considered that healthy. And I was very, very far from it. Let alone I had all these other issues, toxicities going on inside my body that weren't even being addressed. So I think that's a really big thing when we talk about like weight loss and health in general, is focusing on that feeling. Like, how do you want to feel inside? You want to have energy all day. You want to be sleeping good at night. You want to be nourishing your body. And of course, you want to feel comfortable in your skin and in your clothes and just like confident in general.
Exactly. And this is huge. And this is also where I have a hard time, among many other things, with Western medicine and tracking our BMI. I remember being told once, and I was quite lean at this point. I mean, I was probably sub 20% body fat, which for a female is quite lean. And visually you could see it, but I went to the doctor and, technically I was obese. From my BMI, I was technically obese because of the amount of muscle mass and the way just like my body naturally is structured. I am naturally shaped like a pear. However, I have changed that a little bit through strength training to be a little bit more hourglass shape. And that required a lot of muscle mass, especially in my upper body. My upper body is naturally very thin, and I really kind of changed how that looks through strength training. And so that it just required building a lot of muscle in my upper body. In particular, my lower body naturally just packs on muscle pretty quick. That's just how my body's designed, which I'm very thankful for now, but not necessarily then. And when I was told, you're like, hey, you're obese, like you should probably start running. And I just kind of looked at them being like, yeah, you kind of asked me about my nutrition, about what my movement looks like. And I just wanted, and I said this, I can't remember if I said this to this person, but I have said this to physicians before. I said, hey, can you just like look at me real quick? Do I look obese to you, or do I look pretty healthy? And I want an actual answer from you, especially and this physician actually was this physician. She was a teeny tiny little, and she looked sickly. I mean, tiny to the point where she looked sick. And I just like, look at me. Like, hey, I do not look unhealthy. I'm strong. I was way over exercising. I was tracking all my food, but I was, strength training 4 or 5 days a week. I was doing some cardio 3 or 4 days on top of that. And I'm like, you are out of your mind if you think I am obese at this point just because of what, my height to weight ratio is, but you're not looking at me visually. And this is very common among, I know a lot of women who have heard the same things from the physicians who study change, because it does change, and muscle is denser than fat. It doesn't weigh more. I know that's often said, like, muscle weighs more than fat. 5 pounds of muscle and 5 pounds of fat weigh 5 pounds. The muscle is much denser than the fat. And so it shows up differently on the body. And I think that's a really big distinction too, which once again goes back to do you care about the number on the scale? If you do, why? Versus how are you looking? How are you feeling? Do you feel strong? Do you feel good? Like, what's your relationship look like with movement, with your food, like all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, BMI is a joke. Realistically, like, it doesn't even mean anything. If you're not asking someone about, like, what does their, like you said, their diet, their lifestyle, the movement, stress, all of these things, if you're not asking someone about that and you're just basing something off of a ratio, it literally means nothing. And that, I can't remember when that was created, sometime in the 1900s. I can't even believe that we still use BMI, honestly, because there's no value to it, especially if you're not digging deeper and asking these questions. But yeah, that's, and I hear that too. And that's another thing that makes me kind of sad is, like, why are we still using that? We know so much more, and that there's so many other things that matter at this point about weight loss and whatnot. Like, why are we even still using that? But that's a whole other conversation. One other thing that I wanted to touch on is the yo-yo dieting. And I think we may have talked a little bit about this before, but yo-yo dieting just means, like, you're either trying to, you go back and forth switching between diets. I know a really popular one is like the ketogenic diet. People do that, or just like low carb in general. Whether you're trying to lose weight for an event or, lose weight for summer, I feel like is a pretty popular thing. People start doing it around springtime or before that. This puts so much stress on your body. I want you to actually think about this. If you're choosing to do a diet to lose weight for a couple months, and you know that when you start to eat quote unquote regularly again, that you gain all the weight back every single time that you do it, that right there is indication that it's not doing anything for your body. There's no sustainable weight loss happening. It's kind of like you're tricking yourself, essentially. And it puts so much stress on your body. It can affect your hormones, certainly your cortisol levels, and it makes it harder to have that sustainable weight loss in the long run. So I just wanted to bring up the yo-yo dieting. Excuse me, I've got some throat chakra stuff going on right now. But yeah, the yo-yo dieting is a really big thing. And I see so many people do this this is another thing that, I've been there too, Megan. I'm certainly, you've probably dabbled in the yo-yo dieting, but it's a pretty common thing. And that's why dieting in general is not even something that you won't really hear us talk about dieting a lot, even with the restrictive diets for healing, because these can kind of lead to the yo-yo dieting trend. Because yes, if you've ever done the low FODMAP diet or the SIBO diet, you will probably lose weight on it because you're so restricted from food. And that's kind of where these unhealthy patterns with food come in, and you kind of get forced into unhealthy eating patterns at that point. So yeah, the diets are a really big thing. And I would really encourage you, like, if you're someone who is used to doing that, maybe has done that for the majority of their life, like, start asking yourself those questions. What does sustainable weight loss mean to me? Does it mean, like, getting in touch with my body and being a certain weight for the majority of time and not just random months throughout the year? And start to look into just like eating less processed foods, more whole foods is a really great place to start. Increasing your protein intake is a really great place to start. Increasing your water intake too. Most of us need that. these really, really simple, basic things that don't require any crazy diets can make a huge shift in your life.
Exactly. And it's been a long time since I looked at this, but in one of my continuing education courses as a personal trainer, and I do still do these every couple of years because I'm still certified and I keep that up and active. But there was a study that was done on people who yo-yo dieted. And once again, it's been a long time, it's been many, many years since I've taken this course and we talked about this, but there were studies that were, at least one study that was done on this, and they looked at the impacts on a person. And they showed that every time you kind of like fluctuated up and then, down and then back up, your heart really took a toll. And there was a decrease in muscle in your actual heart, which is very dangerous and can lead to heart issues down the road. So not only is this not just your body for stress for all of these other things, but it can do some damage on your actual heart, which is, we really need that to keep us alive. And, for me, I don't want to mess with my heart at all. I want to make sure that stays in it, that my brain, I just want to make sure those two things really stay in a good place. Because those are, arguably two of the most important things that we have in our bodies. And so we need those. So just food for. So I also want to touch on the strength training piece here because this is really important. And if you ever work with, and once again, I'm still pretty active in a lot of like the fitness space, like nutrition type coaches who also do like workout programming and stuff. And, obviously with COVID and afterwards, there was a huge influx of coaches who never had in-person experience, which, I have some thoughts on that I won't share right now, but you can probably guess what they are, just based on my tone of voice here. But, a couple of things that you'll see here, and it's getting better because I see this more, but it's not very well understood by many in this space. And I am active in a lot of groups, and I, of course, correct a little bit where I can without overstepping. But one of the best is that we can do for weight loss, for like sustained weight loss, that does make it a lot easier, is strength training. And, this is so important because one, as we age, we do lose bone density, we do lose muscle mass, especially as women, we lose it at a higher rate than men. And one of the reasons why, if you have a male partner or, if you've ever done any sort of weight loss, anything with a male and you are a female, it's usually a lot easier for men to lose weight. And that's because they naturally have more muscle mass. And that's the way they are designed. As women, we are designed to have a higher body fat percentage. This is naturally how it's supposed to work. Even if you look in like what many people consider like the best bodies, if we look at the bodybuilding space of male and female competitors, men are coming in at crazy different percentages than women. At the time where I was getting ready to compete, the goal for me in a figure competition was 9 to 12%. For men in their physique, piece, they would end up between like 5 to 8%. And, like for a female, like we can't, like sub 10% is really unhealthy. And I mean, women would be there for literally a couple hours, maybe a day, and then jump right back up because it's so unhealthy. And even like sub 15%, like arguably super unhealthy for most women. But one of the things that for me especially, strength training has been part of my life for 12 plus years consistently. And it really does help to maintain your weight. It takes a lot more calories to maintain muscle mass. You also feel better. You can look, once again, this like quote unquote toned look. There is muscle involved with that we, you have to build. And so that's a really important piece. And for longevity purposes, having a consistent strength training routine, and I could probably do a whole other episode on this, maybe like my next solo episode of just talking about workout programming, because you also cannot, your body gets used to things quickly. I mean, within 3 to 5 weeks, I mean, your body has adjusted and will not change and will not shift, which is a big problem with workout classes and group style fitness. Not saying there isn't other value in those, but when it comes to some other pieces of this, that's really where I see a lot of issues, a lot of dysfunction, and people not understanding why you need workout programming. But this is really important. Now, with that too, guess what building muscle also takes? Calories. It takes calories. And I am seeing this movement more in the nutrition pushing space, in the weight loss, fat loss, space. And I don't think most people do this very well, but there's also a lot of education that goes around from a participant perspective and understanding this in that, if you go to someone and you're eating like 1,300 calories a day, which by the way is not enough calories, you are not getting all the nutrients that you need, and your poor body is going to be stressed out. And you're strength training on top of that. In order to lose more body fat and lose weight, we have to reverse diet you. And so that means building more muscle and also increasing your calories. If you just don't have a lot of wiggle room at 1,300 calories versus if we can get your quote unquote maintenance or baseline calories to 2,000, 2,200, 2,500, makes a really, really big difference. And so that's a really important thing to understand too when it comes to long-term weight loss is, this shift in mentality of not necessarily working out more, but we're maybe working out differently. In general, movement is really important. And also having that metabolic flexibility to have wiggle room so that you can go out to dinner, have some pizza, and not worry that you're all of a sudden going to gain a bunch of weight because, instead of being at your normal 1,300 calories, you're now at 2,200 calories. So I just think that's a really important thing. And once again, maybe I will do just a separate episode, anytime I have to do it my next solo episode. I think that would probably be a good topic to dive a little bit deeper into. And I think that's something that's just really important to understand in that, the more metabolic flexibility we have, the better we're probably going to be.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that would be a great solo episode just because it's a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like prominent topic, especially the strength training alone. I mean, not so much with weight loss, but more when it comes to like stability and balance. Like we have people ask us all the time, what type of calcium supplement should I take to help my bones stay strong? And our first response is always going to be like any type of like slow, steady strength training you can add in is going to be way better than taking a calcium supplement just because it's going to help your body in so many more ways. And it is helpful with weight loss too. Like normally when we have someone, speaking in terms of our clients, when we're done with all the bigger detox work, maybe we've really honed in on the nervous system work, that next step is usually, okay, let's add in some sort of strength training routine to try and get movement levels up. Like we'll usually make sure that they're doing some walking with that, plus the strength training. But just that is normally our first step, unless they have something that they're really set on doing. And we do see results with that. Even myself, like coming from someone who way abused the gym, and it's taken me a really long time to get myself to go back into the gym. Like I'm still working on it. It's not perfect. But even when I do like a couple sessions a week of maybe 2 times a week, 30 minutes of some really light strength training, I will see a difference if I do that. And that's not anything like spending an hour in the gym or anything crazy like that. So even a small, short amount with like switching it up is going to be beneficial for your body.
It's also very good for hormones. It's also really good for blood sugar regulation too. when done appropriately, which is the key here. And, you know, for me, leading up to my car accident, which was like, and I've chatted a little bit about this before, all the ingredients for all of my issues were already there before the accident. And then the accident was really the trigger here. And, I was way over exercising. My cortisol levels, even going into the car accident, were crazy. I mean, I don't have any specific tests or data because that was my norm. But, I had to really back off. And especially in healing cortisol levels, once again, I talk about this on social media quite a bit. I did like 9 supplement protocols to try and heal my cortisol. And it wasn't until I slowed down on the working out, I really took time to feed my body, to sleep, to reduce stress, to regulate the nervous system. That's when I healed. And I promise I tried more than anyone else I know to out supplement my cortisol issues. And you cannot, it's just, you cannot out supplement these things. And exercise plays a really big role in it. We also have to keep in mind, especially with cortisol issues, exercise is a stressor. Now, it is a positive stressor. There are tons of benefits. It is great for you when done appropriately, and it is still a stressor. And so when we do have active cortisol issues, and I get it, you got cortisol issues, you're probably a little puffy in your face, you probably got that lower belly pooch going on, and you can't lose that belly fat. And it seems counterintuitive, but we've seen it too many times to not believe it, that backing off and really going slow, with these things, because it is a stressor, and we need to look at overall stress levels when it comes to cortisol regulation. Once again, all of this goes back to helping the body feel safe again. We just have to take a step back oftentimes. And there are times where you can push it, and there are times when you cannot push it. And for me, I'm very sensitive, and I'm extremely mindful of that, even in my own personal journey and situation. And I know if I go do a workout and I do not sleep great that night, I did too much, and I better spend a couple days really giving my body a break, regulating my nervous system, maybe taking some extra magnesium, whatever it may be, because the thought of going back into an active cortisol flare, thyroid flare, autoimmune flare, it is a non-negotiable for me. And once again, this goes back to being in tune with your body and just knowing where your stress levels are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm the exact same way. Like I will know instantly, like, especially if I just don't get a good night of sleep and I was planning on maybe doing a workout that day, I can't do it. The only thing that I would be able to do is maybe some type of like somatic yoga class where it's like you're literally moving in slow-mo, like trying to get your body to slow down, for some stretching. But yeah, it's crazy when you get that in touch with yourself, and it's kind of like a blessing and a curse sometimes. I mean, if I'm being truthful, because I know myself so well that like if I'm out of balance, like I know that I have to scale back on everything else just to try and get myself back to normal.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm the same way. If I have a bad night of sleep and I was planning on going to the gym, I'm not going to the gym. And if I do, I am doing mobility work, maybe with some light weights, but that's it. And if I don't go to the gym, I'm making sure I go on a walk first thing in the morning, getting that natural light in my eyes, making sure I don't overdo it on the caffeine, which is definitely my go-to. And then I'll do some light stretching just to help open up my body, maybe a yin style type yoga, which is very stretching based. You're just holding poses for like 2 to 5 minutes, no heavy breathing, nothing like that for several days.
Yeah, I love yin yoga. It's such yin yoga and somatic yoga, which looks different for different places. But if you're looking for something to do and you haven't tried those things to get some movement in and maybe like go to a class, be around people, highly recommend those types of yoga classes. They are so great for helping you get in touch and in tune with your body and helping you figure out maybe where you're holding like your stress and your tension, and that can help you like figure out deeper emotional things. Maybe you're storing some emotional stuff there and whatnot. But those two things, even just like general stretching at home, it's so great to help you slow down and get connected with your body. And honestly, I would say that that alone is a really good step for, if we're talking about like, what are the starting things that you could do to help yourself if you're trying to lose weight? I would say slowing down and getting in touch with your body, which can look like many different things. What we just talked about, it can also look like maybe adding in a daily mindfulness practice, whether that's like breath work or maybe taking a walk first thing in the morning, letting that sunshine hit your face. Anything that you can do to help you slow down and get in touch with yourself and how you're feeling is going to be a huge part of this process.
Exactly. Yeah. Fundamental pieces would be stress management, sleep, protein intake. We cannot tell you how many clients come with sleep issues, cognitive issues, energy issues, blood sugar dysregulation, hormone imbalances. And the only thing we change in the first couple weeks is adding in more protein into their nutrition and the massive benefits they get with that. And it's not restrictive. You're adding, all you're doing is just adding some extra protein, making sure you're getting protein at every single meal. That's huge. Water intake, huge. And then some movement. And once again, a gentle 5 to 10 minute walk, stretching, yoga, somatic movement. It doesn't, if you're starting from little to nothing, or you've got so much stress going on, if you just scale back and really focus on gentle, supportive movement, that's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, it really does. And again, all about like just getting in tune and in touch with your body. And I cannot tell you like, or stress this enough, as a society, it's all about like fast pace, fast movement. And I know not everyone lives that way, but I would say 90% of people do. So just taking that time to start to slow down. And you'll even notice too, I'll say one of the questions that I always ask people who we see, and they're coming in and they're doing like maybe hour intense workouts every day, I will just ask them, how do you feel after that? And they'll say, I feel really tired, like I need to take a nap, like maybe I'm really grouchy. And I'm like, okay. I've had people say, I feel like I'm going to pass out. Start to pay attention to that stuff. That's the point of slowing down, because if that's how you're feeling after you're doing a workout, that means it's not benefiting your body. It's actually harming it at that point.
And on the opposite side of that, if you feel like you're dragging all day, every day, except right after your hard workouts, you're a cortisol junkie. And it feels good because you're getting that massive spike of cortisol right during and after your workouts, and that feels good. And then it comes back down, and then you're tired again. And then it's really depleted. And this is also really common. And so that's just so important to understand. The last thing I just want to touch on once more, if you look, and I also comment this from gym management and talking to members who have, come in every single day, and, people who are so consistent, for decades, why do you keep coming in? What helps you be consistent? And it's the emotional connection to the movement. I'm not here to punish my body. I'm not necessarily here to transform my body. My body, and I feel good when I move, when I come to the gym, when I, spend some time here, when I come in 2 or 3 times a week, or, especially in the older population, they come in every day, even if it's just to walk. And it's because there are, mental and emotional and obviously physical benefits. There's some studies out there that show that strength training, when done appropriately, is as effective, if not more effective, than an SSRI. Which I will say, when I got really consistent in the strength training, that's when I was able to get off and stay off my medications for the first time in a decade. All the antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds that I was on, that was a huge shift for me. And, that as my introduction into really consistent strength training shifted how I showed up as a personal trainer, as in gym management, and how I treated it. And certainly I did have not a good relationship with exercise at various points in my life. But I also really understood the mental and emotional component of it. And after my car accident, as I started seeing, orthopedic surgeons and physicians and all that kind of stuff, and it was no more gym. That was really challenging for me mentally and emotionally, because that was a huge piece of what kept me off of meds and kept me in a stable enough position to do that. And so, yeah, there's a lot of that goes into this. And for me, my relationship with movement is, it feels good. It feels good for my body. It feels very supportive. It's not about punishing my body. It's about nourishing my body. And once again, like tapping into like, what kind of nourishment and movement does my body need today? Is that a walk? Is it a stretch? Is it can I do a strength training, workout? Can I push myself a little bit? Does that feel good? And so all of that makes a really big difference.
Yeah, it does. And then there's that also that piece of, for some people, when we're talking about like depression helping or anxiety, maybe with the older population too, like finding that sense of community with like either going to a specific gym, specific yoga studio, workout class. Like we were saying, sometimes these might not be the best option if we're doing the same thing over and over again. But for the mental health aspect, like just being able to get out, go somewhere, and be a part of a group can also be helpful in that department.
Exactly. And that is where I see the benefit in group exercise. Once again, I was a group instructor. I taught a lot of different types of classes for many, many, many years. And even to the point where I was like, this isn't good for people. And I knew the people that were coming to my classes, and I go, you shouldn't be here. And I won't say it to them, but I knew, mentally, I was like, you shouldn't be here. Your body can't handle this. But that is where I see the benefit of group exercise classes, is that community aspect, being able to show up, some of that accountability, fun in groups. And there are also downsides to too.
Yeah, definitely. But overall, I feel like we gave some pretty basic tips about slowing down, getting in touch with your body, nutrition tips, all good starting places if you're interested in shifting what you've been doing to try something else to help with weight loss. These are all really great starting places.
Exactly. And just to maybe confirm to especially a lot of women there that, once again, calories in, calories out, yes, they matter. And they're also not the only thing that matters here. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this episode, learned a lot. As always, like, follow, subscribe. If it resonates, a 5-star review really, really, really means the world to us, and we really appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.